Hey there, Mrs. Feil here. We're now with our next reading for The Danger and Power of a Single Story. I think you're probably noticing by now that different from most of the modules that we've been reading, this one has been dealing mostly with fiction or not true stories. But like we kind of talked about in the one where they were writing fiction stories to get people to prepare for, the big earthquake that we know will be happening sometime. We just don't know when. That sometimes reading it through fiction can create that emotion and that emotional connection that can move people to action. So fiction, even though it's not true, can truly make emotional connection and illustrate things for people in a different way. Okay, I Stand Here Ironing by Tilly Olson. This is an older one, 1961. I stand here ironing, and what you asked me moves tormented back and forth with the iron. I wish you would manage the time you come and talk with me about your daughter. I'm sure you can help me understand her. She's a youngster who needs help and who I'm deeply interested in helping. Who needs help? Even if I came, what good would it do? He thinks because I'm her mother, I have a key, or that in some way you could use me as a key. She's lived for 19 years. There's all that life that has happened outside of me, beyond me. And when there's a time to remember, to sift, to weigh, to estimate, and to total, I will start and there will be an interruption. I will gather it all together again, or I'll become engulfed with what I did or did not do, and with what I should or should not have done and what cannot be helped. She was a beautiful baby, the first and only one of her five that was beautiful at birth. You do not guess how new and uneasy her tendency and her now loveliness. You did not know her all those years. She thought homely, or to see her poring over her baby pictures, making me tell her over and over how beautiful she had been and would be. And I would tell her she was now to the seeing eye, but the seeing eyes are few and non existent, including mine. I nursed her. They feel that's important nowadays. I nursed all the children, but with her, there was all this fierce rigidity of first motherhood. I did it like the books said. Though her cries battered me, trembling, and my breasts ached with swollenness, I waited till the clock decreed. And she's saying, as in the books, they tell you to wait every 2 hours or 3 hours. Even if the baby's crying, you keep it on schedule, that sort of thing. And she's questioning that now. I nursed her. I'm sorry. Why do I put that first? I don't even know if it matters, if or it explains anything. She was a beautiful baby. She blew shining bubbles of sound. She loved motion, loved light, loved color and music and textures. She would lie on the floor in her blue overalls, patting the surface so hard in ecstasy, her hands and feet would blur. She was a miracle to me. And when she was 8 months old, I had to leave her daytimes with a woman downstairs to whom she was no miracle at all. For I worked or looked for work. And for Emily's father, who could no longer endure, he wrote in his goodbye note, sharing want with us. I was 19. It was the pre-relief, pre-WPA world of the Depression. I would start running as soon as I got off the streetcar, running up the stairs, the place smelling sour, and awake or asleep to startle awake. And if you saw me, she would break into a clogged weeping that could not be comforted, a weeping I can yet hear. After a while, I found a job hashing at night so I could be with her days, and it was better. But it came to where I had to bring her to his family and leave her. It took a long time to raise the money for her fare back. And then she got chicken pox and I had to wait longer. When she finally came, I hardly knew her. Walking quick and nervous like her father, looking like her father, thin and dressed in shoddy red, that yellowed skin and her that glared with at the pockmarks, all the baby loveliness gone. She was 2, old enough for nursery school, they said. And I did not know then what I know now, the fatigue of a long day and the lacerations of group life in nurseries that are only parking places for children, except that it would have made no difference if I had known. It was the only place there was. It was the only place we could be together, the only way I could hold a job. And even without knowing, I knew. I knew the teacher that was evil because all these years it has curdled in my memory. The little boy hunched in the corner, her wraths, "Why aren't you outside? Because Alvin hits you? That's no reason. Go out, you coward." I knew Emily hated it, even if she did not clutch and implore, "Don't go, mommy," like the other children mornings. She always had a reason why we should stay home. "Mama, you look sick. Mama, I feel sick. Mama, the teachers aren't there today. They're sick. Mama, there was a fire there last night. Mama, there's a holiday today. No school, they told me." But never a direct protest, never rebellion. I think of our days in the 3, 4 year oldness, the explosions, the tempers, the denunciations, the demands, and I feel suddenly ill. I stop the ironing. What in me demanded that goodness in her? And what was the cost? The cost to her of such goodness? The old man living in back once said in his gentle way, "You should smile at Emily more when you look at her." What was in my face when I looked at her? I loved her. They were all acts of love, but only with the others. I remember what he said, so that it was the face of joy and not of the care or tightness or worry I turned to them, but never to Emily. She does not smile easily, let alone almost always as her brothers and sisters do. Her face is closed and somber, and she wants how fluid. And you want to see it in her pantomimes. Spoke of her rare gift for comedy on the stage that rouses laughter out of the audiences. So dear, they applaud and do not want to let her go. Where does it come from, that comedy? There was none of it in her when she came back to me that second time after I had to send her away again. She had a new daddy now to learn to love, and I think perhaps it was a better time, except that when we left her alone nights, telling ourselves she was old enough. "Can't you go some other time, mommy? Like tomorrow?" she would ask. "It would just be a little while. You'll be gone." In the time we came back, the front door opened, the clock on the floor in the hall. She rigid awake. "It wasn't just a little while. I didn't cry. I called you a little, just 3 times, and then I went downstairs to open the door so you'd come faster." The clock talked loud. I threw it away. It scared me. What like it talked. And she said the clock talked loud that night when I went to the hospital to have Susan. She was delirious with fever that comes before red measles, and she was not fully conscious all week. I was gone, and the week after we were home when she could not come near the baby or me. She did not get well. She stayed skeleton thin, not wanting to eat. And night after night, she had nightmares. She would call for me, and I would sleepily call back, "You're all right, darling. Go to sleep. It's just a dream." And if she still called in a sterner voice, "Now go to sleep, Emily. There's nothing to hurt you." Twice, only twice, when I had to get up for Susan anyhow, I went to sit with her. Now, when it's too late, and if she would let me hold and comfort her like I do the others, I get up to go to her at the moan or restless stirring. "Are you awake? Can I get you something?" And the answer is always the same: "No, I'm all right. Go back to sleep, mother." They persuaded me at the clinic to send her away to a convalescent home in the country where she can have the kind of food and care you can't manage for her, and you'll be free to concentrate on the new baby. They still send children to that place. I see pictures on the society page of sleek young women planning affairs to raise money for it, dancing at affairs and decorating Easter eggs or filling Christmas stockings for the children. I've never had a picture of the children, so I don't know if they still wear those gigantic red bows or the ravaged looks of the every other Sunday when parents can come to visit, unless otherwise notified, as we were notified the first 6 weeks. Oh, it was a handsome place. Green lawns and tall trees and fluted flower beds. High up on the balconies of each cottage, the children stand. The girls in their red bows and white dresses, the boys in white suits and giant red ties. The parents stand below, shrieking up to be heard, and the children shriek down to be heard. And between them, an invisible wall, not to be contaminated by parental germs or physical affection. There was a tiny girl who always stood hand in hand with Emily. Her parents never came. One visit, she was gone. "They moved her to Rose Cottage," Emily shouted in explanation. They don't like you to love anybody here." She wrote once a week, the labored writing of a 7-year-old. I'm fine. How's the baby? If I write my letter nicely, I will have a star. Love. There was never a star. We wrote every other day letters that we could never keep hold of, only hear read once. We simply do not have the room for children to keep their personal possessions, they patently explained when we pieced one Sunday shrieking together to plead how much it would mean to let Emily keep her letters and cards. After each visit, she looked frailer. She isn't eating, they told us. They had rennie eggs for breakfast or mush with lumps, Emily said later. I'd hold it in my mouth and not swallow. Nothing ever tasted good, just like they had chicken. It took us 8 months to get her released home, and the only fact that she gained back so little of her 7 lost pounds convinced the social worker. I used to try to hold and love her when she came back, but her body would stay stiff, and after a while, she'd push away. She ate little. Food sickened her, and I think too much of life too. Oh, she had a physical lightness and brightness, twinkling on by skates, bouncing like a ball up and down and over the jump rope, skimming over the hill. But these were momentary. She fretted about her appearance, thin and dark and foreign looking at a time when every little girl was supposed to look or thought she should look like a chubby blonde replica of Shirley Temple. The doorbell sometimes rang for her, but no one seemed to come and play at the house or be her best friend, maybe because we moved so much. There was a boy she loved painfully through 2 school semesters. Months later, she told me how he had taken pennies from my purse to buy him candy. Licorice was his favorite, and I bought him some candy every day, but he still liked Jennifer better and me. Why, Mommy? Why? A question I could never answer. School was a worry to her. She was not glib or quick in a world where glibness and quickness was easily confused with the ability to learn. To her overworked and exasperated teacher, she was an overconscientious, slow learner who kept trying to catch up and was absent entirely too often. I let her be absent, although sometimes the illness was imaginary. How different from my now strictness about attendance with the others. I wasn't working. We had a new baby. I was home anyhow. Sometimes, after Susan grew old enough, I would keep her home from school too and have them all together. Mostly, Emily had asthma, and her breathing was harsh and labored. It would fill the house with a curiously tranquil sound. I would bring 2 old dresser mirrors and boxes of collections to her beds. It would be a select beads, single earrings, and bottle tops and shells and dried flowers and pebbles, old postcards and scraps, all sorts of oddments. And then Susan would play kingdom, setting up landscape and furniture, peopling them with action. Those were the only times peaceful companionship between her and Susan. I've edged away from it, that poisonous feeling between them, that terrible balancing of hurts and needs that had between the two, and did so badly those early years. Oh, there are conflicts between the others too, each one human, needing, demanding, hurting, taking, but only Emily and Susan. No, Emily towards Susan, that corroding resentment. It seems so obvious on the surface, yet it's not obvious. Susan, the second child, the golden and curly haired and chubby, quick and articulate and assured in everything in appearance and manner, Emily was not. Susan, not able to resist Emily's precious things, losing or sometimes clumsily breaking them. Susan telling jokes and riddles to company for applause while Emily sat silent. To say to me later that it was my riddle, Mother, I told it to Susan. Susan, who was all of 5 years difference in age, was a year behind Emily in developing physically. I'm glad for that slow development, that she widened the difference between her and her contemporaries, though she suffered over it. She was too vulnerable for that terrible world of youthful competition, of preening and parading, of constant measuring of yourself against every other, of envy. If I had that copper hair, if I had that skin, she tormented herself through about not looking like the others. There was enough of the unsureness, the having to be conscious of words before you speak, the constant caring, what are they thinking of me? The what kind of impression am I making? There was enough without having all of it maligned unendurably by the merciless physical drives. Ronnie is calling. He's wet and I change him. It is rare there to have such a cry now. That time of motherhood is almost behind me when the ear is not on for one's own, but always must be racked and listening for a child's cry, the child call. We sit for a while and I hold him, looking out over the city spread in charcoal with its soft aisles of light. Shuggily, he breathes, a funny word, a family word, inherited from Emily, invented by her to say comfort. In this and in other ways, she leaves her seal, I say aloud, and I startle at saying it. What do I mean? Why do I start to gather together to try to make coherent? I was at the terrible growing years, war years. I don't remember them well. I was working. There were four smaller ones now. There was no time for her. I had to be a mother and a housekeeper and a shopper. I had to set her seal. Mornings of crisis and near hysteria, trying to get lunches packed, hair combed, coats and shoes found, everyone to school, childcare on time, the baby ready for transportation, and always the paper scribbled on by the smaller one, the book looked at by Susan, then mislaid, the homework not done, running out of that huge school where she was one, she was lost, she was a drop, suffering over the unpreparedness, stammering and unsure in her classes. There was so little time left at night after the kids were bedded down. She would struggle over books, always eating. It was in those years she developed an enormous appetite that is legendary in our family. And I would be ironing or preparing food for the next day or writing the email to Bill or tending the baby. Sometimes to make me laugh or out to her despair, she would imitate happenings or types at school. I think I said one, why don't you do something like this at the school amateur show? One morning she phoned me at work, hardly understandable through the weeping. Mother, I did it. I won. I won. They gave me first prize. They clapped and wouldn't let me go. Now suddenly she was somebody, as imprisoned in her indifference as an anonymity. She began to ask to perform at other high schools, even in colleges, then at city and statewide affairs. The first one we went to, I only recognized her that first moment when thin, shy, she almost drowned herself in the curtains. Then, was this Emily? The control, the command, the convulsing and deadly clowning, the spell, then the roaring, stamping audience, unwilling to let this rare and precious laughter out of their lives. Afterwards, you ought to do something about her with a gift like that. But without money or knowing how, what does one do? We had left it all to her. And that gift, as often eddied inside, clogged and clotted, and been used and growing. She is coming. She runs up the stairs two at a time with her light, graceful step, and I know she's happy tonight. Whatever it was that occasioned your call did not happen today. Aren't you ever going to finish ironing, Mother? Whistler painted his mother in a rocker. I have to paint mine standing over an ironing board. This was one of her communicative nights, when she tells me everything and nothing as she fixes herself a plate of food out of the ice box. She is so lovely. Why do you want me to come in at all? Why were you concerned? She will find a way. She starts up the stairs to bed. Don't get me up with the rest in the morning. But I thought you were having midterms. Oh, those, she comes back and quietly says lightly. In a couple years, they'll all be out and dead. They won't matter a bit. She said it before. She believes it. Because I've been dredging the past and all that compounds a human being is so heavy and meaningful to me. I cannot endure it tonight. I will never total it all now. I will never come in to say she was a child seldom smiled at. Her father left me before she was a year old. I worked her first 6 years and there was work, or I sent her home to his relatives. There were years she had to care she hated. She was dark and thin and foreign looking in a world where prestige went to blondness and curly hair and dimples, slow where glibness was prized. This was a child of anxious, not proud love. We were poor and could not afford for her the soil of easy growth. I was a young mother. I was a distracted mother. There were other children pushing up, demanding. Her younger sister was all she was not. She did not like me to touch her. She kept too much to herself. Her life was such she had to keep too much to herself. My wisdom came too late. She has much in her, and probably nothing will come of it. She is a child of her age, of depression, of war, of fear. Let her be. So all that she will not be bloom. But how many does it? There is enough left to live by. Only help her to believe. Help it to make it there is no cause for her to believe that she is more than this dress on the ironing board, helpless before the iron. Okay, very sad story of young motherhood during war and the Depression. Okay, so we will see you at the next reading.